So this episode, I believe titled The Fisher King, is the fourth episode of our latest season of Doctor Who, and it was quite mind-boggling. Did the episode overstretch its bounds, or was it just what this show needed? Alright, guys, gals, and everything in between! This episode of Doctor Who was quite a caper, if you will. This episode, the Doctor breaks the fourth wall, which he has done in the past, but particularly with, I believe, Listen and just other episodes in the old school Doctor Who era. The episode starts off right where the last one left off. The TARDIS materializes, and they exit the TARDIS. And they're looking around in the 80s, which I love that finally Stephen Moffat is willing to reference old school Doctor Who or other stuff from a few years ago, because then they're like, oh wow, this was before Harold Saxon and all that. I was like, oh thank God, people still remember that Harold Saxon was a thing. One thing that I do have to say is the village they go to, does it not look like Unit from the Jon Pertwee era? I mean, seriously, it looks like it. I want to know if they used that same set. The episode turned off and I pretty much just hit the ground running on getting you guys this review, so I didn't have time to really look that up. But I have to say, it looks like the old Unit base. So they're running around and they meet the Patriarch, I believe his name is. He looks like a weird gopher man, and he's a part of the race that they've been taken over more than any other race. And the Fisher King's race came and liberated him, but got so irritated by those people that they enslaved him anyway. And I thought that was pretty funny. They go up into the ship and they see that there's not really a body yet, and so they're early. And as they go around, the Fisher King gets out, and that's when heads start dropping. Now, I like the way, how I told you that the last episode reminded me of that feeling of like The Thing, an Alien, where you're discovering everything. This episode had that monster movie feel that I love, where you're going around and the Doctor, they don't see the monster right away. The Fisher King, they have a shot where like the Doctor's running and he hides behind a wall, and you see like the shadow of something walking by, or you see the reaction of someone seeing something. It made the episode scary. It made me sit there and say, I don't want to run into the Fisher King. This thing is creepy. Which also, by the way, they got some voice acting help from the band Slipknot. I thought that was kind of strange. You know, props to the Slipknot guy being in Doctor Who. I didn't know that Slipknot were Whovians. I think one of the most important lines was one of the crew members from Unit pauses and looks as he sees this girl that he cared about died, and then he was like, and you know, you're gonna save Clara, you're willing to bend your own rules. Which means the Doctor isn't always that much of a hero, because he breaks his own rules, but he tells other people that they can't. Doctor Who always does kind of play with it. They're like play with the rules that they give themselves by, and the Doctor breaks the rules anyway, where like certain things are time locked, like Rose's father got hit by the car, so then all of a sudden those like universe eaters came through and started eating everything, and like that was a thing. And then that's also in the comic books. That those things happen when a weird paradox happens. And there were like 1,000,005 paradoxes and no universe eaters, so do they just take the day off sometimes? I don't know. From my intro, did they overstep their bounds? Because yes, Doctor Who plays with its own rules. And so I'm like, were they trying a little too hard to overreach? I don't necessarily think they did. I think it does create more questions about the time travel, because ultimately the Doctor did bend his own rules to save Clara. The Doctor, it's basically, no one can bend the rules unless the Doctor does it, is what it seems like. And the Doctor knows it, and I love that he didn't say anything, because that was really good. Like, that shows the Doctor, he's like, you know what, I'm not going to answer that, because I'm probably not as good of a person as I say I am. So that really was compelling. I liked seeing that emotional value that the companion was like, you know, basically anyone you want to save, you're going to save. But if you don't really care that much, like care enough to get that person, you won't. and he doesn't say anything, which means he's kind of right, which goes back to the previous season of Clara, do you think I'm a good man? I don't think most people think the Doctor is a good man when they're on an adventure with him a lot of the time, because he doesn't really look out for everybody. And that arc was progressing on and on. I feel like the episode was a little disjointed, though. I had fun with it, but the episode seemed a little disjointed, because then you'd cut back to Clara, and some of these things are still happening. Now, the Doctor's talking about the butterfly effect, and things are going to change, and Clara's in the future, and nothing's changing. I thought the water was going to be a bigger part of it, and it wasn't. Clara's with the phone, and the phone is looking at the Doctor, and the Doctor's seeing his dead self, and all of that is compelling, and they had to go grab the cell phone, which ended up being useless to the story plot. One of my favorite parts of the episode, though, was forward in time, when they were all exploring the corridors to try and find the deaf person's translator. I forgot the guy's name, but they were trying to find that guy. And as they're walking down the corridors, now the girl is deaf, and I liked the idea that you'd see the creature, the ghost, walking behind her with the axe, and like they'd cut between Clara walking or the guy walking, and you'd hear the on the ground of the axe, and then they cut back and they show it from her perspective, where she's walking and she hears nothing, and it made it all the more creepy. That was the best part of the episode. She realizes she can't hear what's going on behind her, and she puts her hand down on the ground and she feels the vibrations from the axe dragging, and then they do like this from, I can't believe I'm going to say this, from the movie Daredevil. The movie Daredevil. Oh. And they do like a deaf hearing view where it's like she's seeing sound, or they're letting us see the sound. That whole segment. And then she freaks out and then boom, dodge. That was the best part of the episode, because it was so intense and it felt all so visceral and real, because a deaf person wouldn't hear it. And it makes it all the creepier that you can't hear what's going on behind you, which is a constant paranoia I have in regular life. The Doctor decides that it's only a matter of time until he dies, so he goes to confront the Fisher King himself. And confronting the Fisher King, the Doctor is talking to him, and I like that he's walking through this dark area and he can't see the weird cloister man. He's talking to him about how these people, you have to realize that the Time Lords were evil too. And so, you're not so much of a difference. Once again, playing on the tropes of the Doctor being a hero. And the Doctor's like, oh yeah, well, I'm erasing it out of my head, because when you're a dead man, you have nothing left to lose. And he's setting him up, saying, I'm willing to break the rules if I'm going to die. I'm just going to try and stop you now. At this point, I'm pissed off. I'm going to stop you. So he runs off and leaves, and the Fisher King is like, oh, no, you're not going to stop me, doing his old evil babble, and he throws him over the Doctor over by the coffin. And the Fisher King runs out, and he looks at his ship, and he sees that they're... This whole episode, by the way, reminded me of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, where they're each running across their own time streams. I thought that was really cool, too. But the Fisher King sees that the stasis pole, the sci-fi thing was missing, and he's like, the Doctor, and you see it, and he blows up the dam, and the Doctor did it. The Doctor did it. And then the town gets flooded, and you're like, okay, well, what's gonna happen now? So then all of a sudden, it's the future again, and the coffin opens, because they're in the coffin room, and the Doctor gets out. Which means that a paradox happened, which is what the beginning of the episode played up, is where the Doctor's talking to the camera about Beethoven didn't write any music, he didn't write his symphony, but the Doctor still went back in time, had to give Beethoven the music that he wanted autographed, but then who wrote the music? So it creates this paradox of, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of argument. And the Doctor, that means that the Doctor came with Clara on an adventure, came across himself in a coffin, and had to go back in time to put himself in the coffin while giving himself a message to the future so he could know what he had to do at the right time. It was a mind-boggling paradox, and I was like, you know what? The show was overreaching itself for a little while with the universe ending people not showing up, in my opinion. But then all of a sudden I was like, but the whole time were they not? Because they already knew that the Doctor was going to refix this whole time loop by already being forward in time, which once again came the chicken. What came first, the chicken or the egg? That was the theme of this episode, and I really liked that. So I feel they do have a few unexplained consistencies, like why didn't the Doctor, if he was willing to break all these rules and do all this stuff with this paradox, why wasn't he willing to save more people? I feel like there could have been a resolution to that, but in the end, I'm sure they had a reason. But I, in the end, still enjoyed the episode. I don't think it was the strongest episode of the season. I think when I'm looking at the show, like this season as a whole, I don't think I'm going to be remembering this episode as much as the others, like the tree episode in last season. Alright, guys, gals, and everything in between! Do you guys think that this episode maybe overstretched its bounds a little bit, or do you think that it was the right amount? I'm kind of in the middle. I felt like in the beginning it went way out there in terms of what it should be doing, and it should have been toning it back a little bit, then letting out the weird. But I still think in the end I enjoyed the episode. So what did you guys think? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got plenty more videos coming to you.